Hi, and welcome to Rock Your Shine after you've been cracked wide open. My name is Susan Casey. I'm an author, mental health therapist, grief and loss coach, and a sister who lost her younger brother in 2014. Each week, we'll bring you inspiring and transformational stories to help expand your perspective on life after a profound loss of any kind. I've learned that when life's tragedies crack us wide open, it allows us to experience our inner light in a more profound and life-changing ways. Our weekly stories will move you and bring you light, love, inspiration, and hope as you walk along your path toward integrating loss into the tapestry of your life. Sit back, listen, and know that you're in the midst of your own transformation, and it is possible to rock your shine after you've been cracked wide open. So you get out early.
Yeah, yep. Parole hearing happens, and I'm released to a corrections center, which is kind of a halfway house. So that was at 6 years, and I ended up doing 6 months. So I did 6.5 years out of the 7 based on reports and, the things that I've done. And in the correction center, you're allowed to get a job. You can kind of help reintegrate a little bit. You still have to report there. You're still locked up. You're not free to come and go, but you can have a job detail. You can go to the store once a week. You can go to the laundromat and just kind of get yourself back into being out into society and stuff like that. So I was there for 6 months and then ended up going home to my parents' house, which I was fortunate. Some people, they don't have
nowhere
that
to
support.
go. Right.
They don't have that support. And recidivism is wicked high.
Yeah, I know.
And if you don't have the support and you don't have the mindset and you're not exposed to the fact that you can even change your mindset, there's people who have their beliefs and hold their beliefs and live by their beliefs and never make any kind of an attempt to make amends or changes because they might not even be aware of the fact that that is a power that we have. Like it's.
Yes. And it's also in a society that doesn't, I don't think that we are generous with second chances, and so, my husband and I own a pub, and he had a guy that had gotten out of prison and gave him a job. And that is just another area that we have a lot of work to do in terms of giving people second chances when they have paid their dues, they get out. If you don't have a job, what is it that you're supposed to do if no one will hire you? Right. So guys that were in there for selling drugs go back to selling drugs because that is what they know and they need to survive. Yep. So what happened with you around employment when you got out? How old were you, by the way? Because I know that this was many, many years ago at this point. How old were you when you were released?
I came home in 2003, which would have made me
20 years ago. 20, yeah.
Yeah. So I can't even math right now.
Well, you were in your early 20s still. So you still.
No, I was 29 when I came home. 29? Yeah, 29 when I came home.
And so what did you do? You moved back in with your parents, and then what did you do?
I filled out more job applications than I can't even tell you how many. And we had to keep track as part of parole. You have to, if you fill out an application, you have to ask the person you got the application from to sign this so I can turn it into my parole officer so I can prove that I'm trying to find a job. And none of that worked. I ended up, one of my childhood friends, his father was a supervisor at a factory that did greeting cards and big posters like the stuff you see hanging from the ceiling in Target and stuff like that. He's the only reason I got a job. So and it kind of goes back to what you're talking about. Without support and without help, like I probably, if I had to guess, it was well over 40 different places I tried to apply. It might have been more than that. I didn't really keep track. It was a lot. It was very disheartening. Very disheartening.
It has to be. I just can't even imagine, because here you've done your time, you've paid for your mistake, and you feel like you're having to pay for it over and over and over again. So someone gives you that second chance.
Yes. Yeah. And you have to know somebody. It really comes down to, I feel like you have to know somebody. or you're lucky that somebody will take a second chance on you. And again, this was 20 years. I don't know, 20 years ago. I don't know how
I
much has
don't think
changed
it's
since then.
changed. I don't think it's changed much. We've got some
Yeah.
beautiful programs in the actual state of Maine. We're pretty progressive in terms of what we do with programs that we have that put guys to work when they get out and women
Nice.
too. But that I don't think that is the prevalent model in our country.
No, yeah, no, it's too bad. But yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
the only way I was able to gain employment was through a friend of
So,
mine's father.
so tell us, I mean, how did you get from there to where you are now?
Holy smokes.
It's a long time, right? We're talking close
Yeah,
to
it's a lot to cover.
20 years.
Yeah, it's a lot to cover. I'll try to bullet point it. To want to be able to help people with grief and trauma,
All of it.
and
Mm-hmm.
it starts probably just to kind of skim along. I did get married and raised my stepson, Logan. I don't have children of my own, but I have multiple stepchildren. I did get married. Everything was great. I close ties with the family, really grateful to be back around. Grandparents. So my grandmother passes away on my mother's side. And then shortly thereafter, my matriarchal grandfather committed suicide. Understandably so. And I say understandably so.
Died by suicide.
Died by suicide. Yes, no, you're correct. And these are things that, like I say, I'm trying to work
At
on
the whole
how
world,
this comes out.
we all need to, trust me. And I
Yes,
just say that,
yes,
listeners, I mean, in the world of suicide, the reason I just corrected committed is because committed makes it sound like a crime. And so it's stigma that we're trying to remove for people who choose to
yes,
take their life. So that's why
yes,
I said that.
yes. And like I say, understandably so, because him and my grandmother were so inseparable, so close. I can understand why not. He just didn't want to be here without her anymore. And so that, and like I say, I'll just try to bullet point this so we don't run out of time. After that, my father died by suicide, and my father he'd been on, psychotropics. He'd had depression. He's had not like a diagnosed mental illness, but there were medications and trying to regulate his moods and stuff like that. So there was a struggle there that kind of led up to that.
And was your
And
father the son of your grandfather? I don't know. I didn't know if your
no,
grandfather was your mother's.
no, I'm sorry. That was my matriarchal grandfather. So my
Okay.
stepmother, my mom who raised me, who I loved to death.
Mm-hmm.
Her father, after her mother passes away,
He
her
took his
father died
life.
by suicide.
And
Yep.
then your
Then my
father.
father, and for whatever I had done to put myself together up to that point, because it came out of nowhere. In retrospect, maybe not. When you can look back at it, there's okay. But in the moment,
It
and I was
felt
the
that
last,
way. It felt like it came out of nowhere.
and I was the last person that he talked to, called me from his cell phone and made a statement about where he was and he was going to go, and okay. And then it was just really kind of weird. And then it kind of clicks what he had said, that he was going to go, and try to call him back. And then you get the news. And then now I'm the one who tells everybody that this is what happened, and I get to watch everybody's reaction. And what I had done to build my life at that point, there was some sort of just complete unraveling of myself that
Absolutely.
happened
And
after that.
you're close to your dad, right? Like it
Yeah.
sounds like you had a close relationship with your
Yeah.
father.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially when I came home. When I came home from prison, I was all about, man, I told everybody that I loved him. I hugged everybody. I'm like, things that weren't really, really prevalent beforehand, like our closeness as a family. I was all about that. We had barbecues and get-togethers, and like I just really put a lot into that after the fact. So losing him, I spun out. I ended up divorcing my first wife. No ill feelings. We never had problems. We always got along great. When we separated, she was just so gracious, because she had never done anything to make me want to not be with her. But whatever was happening with me, and I don't know if it was my flight response, like I just felt like I needed to get out of, I moved out of town, just kind of
Well,
spun my,
we all know too that when there is a traumatic loss, I mean, I've had numerous conversations on this podcast where it changes. People do lots of things. They leave relationships, they cut friends out of their life. it shakes up our world. I mean,
You question everything.
forget about all of the rest of the trauma that you have in your background. Just the trauma of your father taking his life would shook your life up in a different kind of way. I mean, he had been your rock for all of those years, and suicide is particularly traumatic for all of those reasons. Why the whys, right? The relentless
Yeah,
whys. How did
it
I
makes you
not see
question.
it? Right,
It makes you
everything.
question everything. It questions the way you see everything. It questions the reasons why you have been doing things the way it just because what was he thinking? What was he feeling? What had he sacrificed? What had yeah, it just goes on and on and on. It spun me out. And so like I say, I moved out of town completely. I didn't quit my job, but I was working in a different town and driving back and forth. So I just moved closer to work and kind of established myself there and like, okay, this is where I'm going to figure it out and get it together. And through the process of all that, my sister had developed, she had already had like a drug problem, prescription drugs, back pain from having, at this point, she's got three of the boys. I have 5 nephews. She has 3 of the boys at this point. And she had problems with prescription drugs and other stuff. And one of her friends had even pulled me aside before my dad and had kind of approached me about Melissa having a problem and maybe we should try to do something about it and really kind of sent some flags up for me. But after this, over the next 7 years after that, it turned into heroin addiction and then she's got all 5 boys.
And this is the sister that you went to prison for, right?
Yes, my only sister. So develops a heroin addiction, and we do what we can to help. We put her in a couple of programs, and she's not living with. They weren't married. He's my brother-in-law, as far as I'm concerned. He's the father of all 5 of my nephews. He helped raise them. They were never married, but that's my brother-in-law. But even he had drug problems, and the whole. So me breaking this chain of trauma from my biological family and whatever else, but it's still like through my sister and through my brother-in-law who generationally has gone through the same kind of shit. Who my brother-in-law I met in prison and he met my sister at my wedding. So there's that. But just what the boys went through and what my sister went through, especially after losing my dad, because my sister and my dad were super close. He was grandpa. Those were his grandchildren and like he was there all the time and they had this amazing relationship and he was always around and just a huge part of their life. And then he's gone. And whatever my sister was dealing with up to that point from the things that had happened to her, I think she also derailed. Tried to get her as much help as we can. But there's, my nephews are a primary motivator to why I'm here. So they lost custody at one point and the boys got split up and were in 2 different households, good environments, amazing environments. And then back together. And there's all kinds of trauma and stuff that happens with the boys. My sister ends up doing a weekend in a mental institution and just kind of getting in trouble with the law. My brother-in-law is in trouble with the law, back and forth. And so my father took his life in 2012. And I think we all did the best we could after that, but things just weren't right. They weren't the same. My mom wasn't right. None of us were. And I think the boys, even being children, like they pick up on that, like the vibe and the energy and the pain and the hurt. And like, it becomes kind of part of how they're growing up. That was actually September 16th. We're almost there. Of 2019, my mom passed away from cancer and she kind of fought it and did the chemo and did all the things. And I was able to help take care of her there at the end and everything. It sucked. I mean, it's cancer. And if you've ever seen how that works, it's just not.
Many times, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's just not great.
It's horrific. And so what's going on with your sister at this point? Is she sober at this point when you're
No.
Okay.
No, there is no sober, unfortunately. She went to a couple of treatment programs. I feel like it lasted a short period of time. But whatever she was carrying and whatever she was carrying and burying, it just was too much. She wasn't even living with the boys at that point. She was here and there and just really, really
had the kids been taken from her or was her husband?
I think she had lost custody.
Okay.
And they were with their father, which again, he does the best he can, but he has his own stuff to deal with. And there's drugs and they're in an environment where they're in an area that's like really heavy with meth and stuff like that. So the environment's not helping. But she's not even living at home when mom passes away. After mom passes away, my new wife and we got together in 2017.
Okay.
We leave town like, okay, because it'd been with dealing with the house and dealing with all the other stuff after having been there with mom, and it had just been a lot. So we decided we're going to get out and we're just going to take a break. And then the sheriff's department's trying to contact me for whatever reason. And my head just keeps going to like somebody tried to do something at the house while we were gone or this and that and the other. And yeah, no, they were calling to let me know that my sister had died from a drug overdose in a bathtub full of water, which flashes me back to when she was in the mental health hospital. I went to visit her and she had made a statement, which I didn't pick up on. Yeah, I did all right all the way up to now, huh? Mm. She made a statement when I was there visiting her that I didn't pick up on at the time, because we were talking about mom, and she was locked up while mom was sick. So we knew mom wasn't doing well. And she had made a reference about having a plan to fix it. And I thought she like had some kind of idea of how to get clean, where she was going to go. And even like, I'm like, well, maybe she's going to leave town. Like I had all these, that's not what she meant.
She meant she was going to leave.
Yeah. She meant she'd found a way to fix it and get herself out of, and to talk to her about what it's like to be addicted to heroin and the not mattering how bad you don't want anything to do with it, having absolutely no choice in your actions whatsoever, and how controlled and just the pain. And so I get that call.
I just am feeling need. I feel sadness, and I just want to say that I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
The losses that you've had in your life. I'm going to cry now. I can't truly imagine. Yeah, I just wanted to say that.
It's a lot. And like we had discussed before, to tell the story sometimes, because it's what I've been through. I've dealt with it. I've assimilated it into my life the best I can. And I don't want to say it's no big deal, but to me, it's my normal. So to express it and to share it is just like, this is normal. But I also understand that, people who haven't experienced this degree of loss, like it's a lot, and it is. Which brings me to kind of why I am where I am now. So after all of that, my nephews, and they've been through more trauma than just the things we've discussed. There's been
Are you raising your sister's children, or is the father raising the children?
No, my brother-in-law is still
the father. He's
with the boys.
Yeah. Okay.
My current wife has 3 children. The oldest daughter just got married and asked me to walk her down the aisle, which was, this one, she can make me cry for some of the most amazing reasons. She's a very wonderful soul. And her son is the same. He's 23. He's the same age as my stepson from my previous marriage, whom is also an amazing man. And they're wonderful kids, all of them. And my primary focus, since my wife and I have been together, is her youngest daughter, who she just turned 14. And my wife left her husband because of yelling and screaming, and no actual physical violence, but a lot of just emotional violence, to the point of where even when we got together with her youngest, with Macy, my tone, if I'm not mindful of my tone, especially when she was younger, with no intention of being harsh or no intention of being authoritarian, but just being a man and just using my normal voice, she would run and hide in a closet, cover up with a blanket. Like, this is stuff that we've processed. But I've done my best to be consciously intentional with what I have learned about how to raise girls and just the developmental psychology behind it, and try to arm myself the best I can to do the best I can for her. I'm not sure how I got to that, but
because I was just asking, like, where
So with my nephews and everything that they've been through, my second oldest nephew he's 14 now. At the age of 12, had tried to commit suicide, and since has tried to commit suicide again, to the degree of like he's doing the best he can. He's acting out, he's whatever, for all the things that he's been through. And there's been abuse there's been, not from my sister, which I found out afterwards. Like, there's a lot of things that my sister did that traumatized these kids as well, which I don't necessarily know if that came down through the family, because my mom was abused. And so there was a lot of that took place. So in trying to help my brother-in-law with my nephews, they live over an hour and a half away. So like, there's no like real regular connection, no real regular communication. I mean, no more like visiting and stuff. Them getting to that point where now one of them is trying to take his own life and wanting to be able to help, and their father wanting my help. But like, how do you do that? Like, that's so far out of my scope. Even for all the personal development and self development and personal growth, like all the things that I've been into, and like, that's not in there. So that is what has led me to especially wanting to help with grief, because I've gotten myself through a lot.
You sure have.
And
you sure have.
And through to trying to learn about grief. And I started with like a basic life coaching class, because for years I've just wanted to help people. I just didn't know how. I didn't have a modality for it. I didn't want to go to school. I didn't want to try to do the therapy thing. I just felt like that was too big. So in a desperate attempt, I guess, I latched onto this life coaching thing, which has put me in an ecosystem, in an environment for growth, just tremendous amounts of healing.
Growth. Yes.
Tremendous amounts of healing and growth, and networks, and being introduced to people like you and Cheryl, and has led me to the International Association of Trauma Recovery Coaching, which is a program I just started. Like, first class started 2 weeks ago. And this is 100% trauma based. And within that ecosystem, I've also found classes and programs for helping support family members who have lost members to suicide, grief. It just, all the pieces are in place now. So where I'm at right now, I'm in an education mode, trying to, because I've been through a lot and I understand a lot, but I don't feel like I have at this point the tools to accurately guide somebody, like confidently guide somebody. Like, I could be helpful, I can be supportive, but I'm trying to learn the tools and the strategies to help people acknowledge, accept, and assimilate their traumas, their grief, their losses, and be able to move forward with their life. Because when these things happen to us and we're not aware of them, and we're not aware of the fact that we can change our beliefs, and we can change our habits, and we can, like, without access to that knowledge, like, we just get stuck. Like, these terrible things happen in whatever development we're in. Like, that's kind of where we end up sticking, to either avoid facing those traumas, or because of what the traumas do to us, or because of what the grief does to us. Grief barriers, trauma blocks, all these things. So, but I also understand that you can't just dive into this and try to drag somebody out. So this is why I'm getting educated. I want to make sure I can do this properly and bring more light into the world, and just kind of help people who are struggling and suffering. And I feel like, because of my story, like, you can't just go to somebody who read a book and says, this is how you do this. I don't think the trust is going to be there. I don't think the rapport is going to be there. I don't think the relationship's going to be there. But if somebody can come to me and share stories similar to mine in any way, shape, or form, I have relatability through my own experiences. We never see it the same way, and it's never exactly the same, but the similarity can help us create a bond that I want to be able to use to just help people grow and heal and try to live the best life that they can. So it
is just such a beautiful, remarkable story. And this is the reason for my podcast, when I talk about people who are able to rock their shine after they've been cracked wide open. And your story is such a beautiful example of what I mean by that, because it is when we really step inside our own heart and get to know who we really are at our essence, which is always love. And it's just, I want to thank you I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing this story, but I want to thank you for having the courage and the fortitude to embrace your own light and do what you're doing. It is not an easy thing, this thing called life and evolution. And it takes work, doesn't it? It takes work. It takes a deep belief, and it's easy to lose faith in ourselves. And I'm going to end with these two questions that I really am very interested to hear how you're going to respond to them, because you did not have a lot of self-love for a long time, right? Mm-hmm. And I am wondering what self-love means to you. What does it mean to have compassion and love for yourself?
Accepting myself for all the things that have happened and having more belief in myself and my abilities. Like, so imposter syndrome, insecurity, like there's a lot that I fought through, and it's not gone by any means. But self-love to me is allowing myself to become the best that I absolutely can, and stop believing the things that I was programmed with about my inabilities or how small I am, or like we don't have to accept that. That was somebody else's idea. So self-love is embracing all the things that have happened to me and allowing myself to become just the best that I can, so that I can be a brighter light for anybody else.
Beautiful. Finish the sentence for me. Hope is
knowing that the good in people and the light in the world and our belief in ourselves and our ability to help others, that's real. I don't know if that's even a complete sentence.
No, I don't think it needs to be. I think if I had to summarize it, hope is believing in the power of our own light. That's what it sounds like.
If we focus on, and it's easy to get stuck. If you focus on this happened to me, that happened to me, this, that's where you're going to stay. It's about acknowledging this happened to me. Now we have to accept, okay, this happened to me, but I'm okay. And then assimilate that happening with who you are, and then grow and learn what you need to learn to do better and be better. And
we hold the pen to write our story.
Yes,
right?
we do.
We hold the pen to write our story, and our past does not dictate our future.
No, not at all.
So, good Lord, I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing your light.
Thank you for having me. And thank you for giving me this platform. Like I say, I understand that my story is going to be helpful. I need to start figuring out how I'm going to get it out there. So thank you very much.
You're so welcome. So I want to thank all of my listeners for tuning in. I know that this was a rich and complex story, and I want to thank you for listening. And I always have a deep belief that people out there who are listening will take from it what they need to apply it to their own life. And remember to mend those relationships that continue to hold you hostage or bring you pain. And thank you, and we'll see you guys all here next week. Bye for now. Thank you for tuning in to Rock Your Shine after you've been cracked wide open. If you enjoyed this episode of Rock Your Shine, please subscribe, share it with others, and leave a rating and review. Be sure to check out the show notes for resources related to this episode. And take a moment and follow me on Instagram at Susan.Casey, where I share a tip of the day to help you feed your soul and cultivate your inner shine. And most importantly, if you have a transformational story to share, please email me at rockyourshine@gmail.com. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys here next week.